Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you've been watching my videos for a while now, then hopefully you will have seen an improvement in production quality from when I first started to now. And one thing I've learned recently is how to improve my audio quality using compression in Final Cut. You've probably heard that audio is like the #1 thing when it comes to YouTube. People will put up with low quality video, but they won't put up with low quality audio. And so when I'm editing, audio is always a high priority for me. So if you've never heard of compression before, I'll go into a brief explanation to the best of my ability. But if you're just interested in the Final Cut settings, then I'll leave a timestamp in the description so you can jump straight to that section. But to briefly explain compression, so when you look at an audio waveform in any format, whether it's in Final Cut or anything else, you'll see that there's big peaks and there's low troughs. Now, as you're probably aware, the peaks in the audio waveform correlate to the loud parts of the video, and then the troughs correlate to the quiet parts of the video. Now, the bigger difference there is between your peaks and your troughs, the greater the dynamic range in your audio, which also means that the loud parts will be really loud and your quiet parts will be really quiet. Now, you might think that having high dynamic range sounds like a good thing, but actually it's a bad thing if you're on YouTube or putting your video online somewhere. Because what it means is different people on different devices will get very inconsistent audio volume levels when they're watching your video. Now, you may have experienced this before where you've been watching other YouTube videos or even movies at home, older movies at home, where there'll be a quiet part of the video and you have to turn the volume right up to really hear what they're saying or to hear what's happening. But then as soon as a louder part of the video begins, a new scene starts or some music plays, it just blasts your stereo and you have to turn it right down. That's because there's really high dynamic range in the audio in that video. The peaks are really high and the troughs are really low, which results in an inconsistent volume level for the end listener. So the idea of using a compressor means that you're bringing the high peaks and the low troughs closer together so that you've got a flatter overall audio. And this means that the end audio for the listener is more consistent and they don't have to adjust their volume all the time. They can just leave it at the one level and it'll be consistent for the whole video. Now, if you think about it, in more modern movies, whether the character is shouting and screaming their lungs out or whether they're whispering, you don't usually have to adjust your volume. And that's because what has happened is the audio has been compressed so that when the character is speaking quietly, the volume is the same, but when they're shouting, the volume is pretty much the same as well. And so that's what we're trying to achieve in our videos on YouTube with compression in Final Cut so that the end viewer doesn't have to adjust their volume while they're watching your content. The other good thing about using a compressor on your audio is that it helps to make it more crisp and clear so that people can understand what you're saying better, especially if you mumble like me. So that brings me to the compressor that's built into Final Cut. So let's jump onto the computer and I'll show you how to use it. So here we are inside Final Cut. I've got some raw unedited footage with some unedited audio. And this is what it sounds like without the compressor. So you may have seen the unboxing video that I did of this iPad a couple months ago. If you haven't seen it already, interested, have a look up here. So as you can see, it's pretty quiet. You can see in the audio meters on the right side that it's only sitting at about -12 dB. Now ideally you want that to be sitting at as close to 0 as possible without actually touching it. And also you can see that the peaks are quite high compared to the low troughs. So in order to get the compressor, we'll just go to the Effects tab. And then if you scroll down to Audio, go to Levels. And then right here under Logic, you'll find the compressor. So all you have to do is just drag and drop that onto the audio. And already you can see that's compressed it quite a bit and it's improved it already. But in order to adjust it, we'll just go up to your audio settings here, scroll down a little bit and you'll be able to see in the compressor section, there'll be a little button which you can click and that'll open your actual compressor. Now there's a lot going on here as you can see, but it's pretty manageable once you know the settings. So first of all, you've got the threshold. We had the audio setting at about -12 dB, so we'll set it just below that, maybe -14 or 15 dB. So next up, we've got the ratio. So when it's set to 2:1, that means it will reduce the dB above the threshold that your audio peaks at by 2. So for example, we've got it currently set to -15. So if it peaked at another 6 dB above -15, it'll reduce that peak by half. So it'll be peak at 3 dB above 15 instead of 6. So for voiceovers and talking videos like this, I'll have it set to around 2 to 3. So maybe around 2.5. That's usually a pretty good level. Now because you're compressing your audio, which means that the peaks are getting lower, your overall volume will actually be lower. So the idea of the next one, the makeup gain, is just to increase your overall volume of your audio to make up to the volume loss that the compressor is putting on your audio. So usually just turn this up to around 4 dB, and you can see in the audio timeline that your audio is beginning to peak, and you can see the little red spots. So I usually turn it down until it's just starting to touch that peak or just below it. So for this video we'll do about 3 dB, which is pretty good for now. Again, you can go back in and change it and play around with it depending on your video, but you just don't want it to be clipping. So next up you've got the knee. This graph illustrates what the knee is. So if you turn it down to 0, you can see that the knee is a bit more of a sharp cut. It's a bit harsher. So for voiceovers, because we want it to be smooth and soft, we'll smooth out that knee by turning it up to around 1. So then you've got the attack, which basically just means how quickly the audio will be compressed. So for voice, we want it to be pretty quick. So we'll keep it around 5 milliseconds. And then release is how fast the audio is decompressed or released. So we want this set pretty low again. I'd probably have it around 15 milliseconds. So if we have a playback of the audio now, you'll see the overall level of the audio is much higher. It's coming out close to 0, which was what we want. And it's a lot flatter. Now, as you can see, it's peaking, which means the audio is distorting, which is not what we want. So in order to stop that distortion, we'll turn on the limiter. And this will stop the audio from going above a certain level. So we'll turn the threshold to 0. So as soon as the audio comes up to 0, it won't go past 0, which means it won't distort. So if we play the audio again now, as you can see, it's not clipping, it's not distorting. It'll stay below that 0 dB. So again, I'll play the audio without the compressor. So you may have seen the unboxing video that I did of this iPad a couple months ago. If you haven't seen it already, interested, have a look up here. And then I'll play it with the compressor. So you may have seen the unboxing video that I did of this iPad a couple months ago. If you haven't seen it already, interested, have a look up here. So you can see there's definitely a big difference between the uncompressed and the compressed audio. And it's something really easy you can chuck straight in your clip before you start editing it, get your audio right, and then go ahead and cut it all up. It'll help make your audio a lot clearer. It'll give you more consistent listening levels. Compression is definitely a little bit tricky to wrap your head around, so if you have any issues, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. So there you go, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that will help you improve the production quality of your videos, whether you're putting them on YouTube or anywhere else. If you're interested in more YouTube related content, check out my YouTube playlist. And other than that, I hope you have an absolutely brilliant day, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.